Have you ever wondered why some people lose control in conflicts like children, while others walk out of any confrontation with icy calmness, as if they already know the outcome? Why does the fear of death paralyze some, turning them into helpless beings, while in others it makes them stronger, sharper, more capable of acting at the most critical moment? What do ancient samurai, Tibetan monks, Stoics of the Roman Empire, and modern FBI negotiators have in common? This is no coincidence. This is a skill, a philosophy turned into practice. This is what the ancients called the art of self-mastery, and what modern psychologists call emotional regulation. The most dangerous one in conflict is the silent one. Most people think the scariest person in an argument is the one who yells, pounds the table with their fist, threatens. But the truth is different. The truly dangerous one is the person who sits quietly, watching, calmly, without trembling lips or reddened ears. That's how a surgeon looks at the operating table when a patient has only seconds between life and death. That's how a cat looks at a mouse, without fuss, without wasted motion, knowing the outcome is already decided. This is what the ancient masters called emotional distance. Not indifference, but the ability to put an emotion on the shelf, like a cup, to see it, but not cling to it. Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary Japanese samurai who won more than 60 life-or-death duels and lived to old age, wrote, "Observe, but do not become the storm. When the opponent shouts, waves his sword, flushes with rage, he has already lost, because he has become his anger." But Musashi stood like a tree in a storm. Outside there is fury, inside, silence. When antiquity meets science, modern neuroscientists have confirmed this principle. When a person says to themselves, "I feel anger," instead of "I am angry," a different part of the brain activates, the prefrontal cortex, the seat of reason. The person ceases to be a hostage of the fight or flight reflex and regains the power of choice. In ancient Rome, Stoics taught the same. Seneca said, "Anger is a brief madness. He who learns to recognize it has already grown wiser than most." In Tibetan monasteries, monks still practice observing emotions, sitting in meditation for hours, noticing every spark of irritation or fear as calmly as clouds drifting across the sky. People, algorithms in human skin. Musashi had another secret. He saw predictability. He called it foreknowledge. Not mysticism, but the ability to see patterns. An irritated man will almost certainly raise his voice. A frightened one will either close off or strike first. A proud woman will pretend all is well, but inside she will be boiling. We are not unique. We are algorithms, programmed by emotions and habits. Before a duel, Musashi observed how the opponent moved, breathed, twitched. One spoke too much, another stayed silent, but his heel trembled. These were patterns. And like a chess master, he calculated 2 or 3 moves ahead. Modern FBI negotiators do the same. They study reactions. If a person repeats the same words often, it means they're cornered. If they suddenly go silent, they're likely planning something. 3 questions that give you the edge. Want to be like that? Before an important conversation, ask yourself 3 questions. What state is my opponent in right now? What does he want from this conversation? What are his most likely reactions? It's a simple practice, but it removes the element of surprise and gives you the edge. The one who foresees, controls. Breath, the main instrument. It may sound banal, but breathing is the main tool of self-control in conflict. Musashi understood this long before psychology or neuroscience existed. He noticed, when a person is afraid, their breath falters. When angry, it grows fast and erratic. And that means instinct takes over. He practiced a simple exercise. Inhale through the nose for 4 counts. Hold. Then exhale slowly through the mouth for 6. Today, neuroscientists call this the activation of the parasympathetic nervous system, the mode in which the brain thinks clearly and the body calms down. Try it. 1 cycle, and panic eases. 3 cycles, and you are back in control. Purpose. A compass in the storm of emotions. Another principle uniting samurai, Stoics, and modern agents. A clear goal. If you don't have a goal, conflict will drag you to where it hurts the most. People in quarrels stop seeing the bigger picture. Their world shrinks to one thing, the enemy in front of them. Musashi didn't fight to prove his strength or get revenge. His goal was simple: survive and win. Everything else he cut away. In modern life, the same applies. Argument with your wife. Do you want to be right? Or do you want to be together? Conflict at work. Do you want to prove the boss is an idiot or advance your idea? Purpose is the anchor that keeps you on course. Conscious death as a source of power. The deepest theme is death. Do we fear it? Of course. But more often, we fear not death itself, but being left without the familiar world. I realized this in childhood. Every night, I would creep to my grandfather's bed, an old monk, and listen. Is he breathing? It seemed that if he died, I would vanish too. And one day he said, "Yes, I will die, but your life will not end because of it. You are not my shadow." Then I understood. Our fear of loved one's death is selfishness. We don't want to be abandoned. We fear loneliness, uncertainty. Buddhists always said, awareness of death is not depression, but the best alarm clock. If I could die tomorrow, why not live today? East and West on death. Western culture sweeps death under the carpet. It terrifies, so it's hidden. Eastern culture is more honest. Buddhists say, meditate on death every day. Roman legionnaires marched into battle with the words memento mori, remember death. They knew fear dissolves once inevitability is accepted, and it gave them strength. True calmness. Most think calmness means emotional numbness, but that's a lie. True calmness is not denial of emotions, but the ability to keep them on a leash. Anger exists. Fear exists, but they don't rule you. Musashi said, a true warrior does not fear emotions. He respects them and uses them properly. Modern psychotherapists repeat, name your emotion, and it loses power. Love without chains. And finally, we cling to people too much. We fear losing them. We think, this is love. But in truth, it is fear. True love is the choice to be together today, with no guarantees of tomorrow. It is respect for freedom. It is the ability to let go. And when loss comes, yes, it hurts, but not a catastrophe, because you are a whole person, not a half. I'll tell you honestly, without embellishment, all this talk about calmness, about self-control, it looks beautiful only on paper. In reality, when a fist is flying at your face, when people are shouting all around you, when your heart is tearing out of your chest, that's when you discover who you really are. I too was once someone drowned by emotions, like a storm sinking a small boat. In my youth, fear paralyzed me. I blushed from anger. I shouted when I should have stayed silent. I lost not because I was weak, but because I was a slave to what I felt. And one day I realized, if I don't learn to master the beast inside me, it will master me. The first discovery, the power of silence. I noticed it first in the simplest, everyday conflict. Everyone was shouting, trying to outscream each other, and suddenly I went silent. Just silent, and started watching. You cannot imagine the effect it had. People expect a reaction, they expect resistance, shouting, a fight. But when you simply look at them calmly, it shakes them more than any punch. That's when I realized that silence can be a weapon. I remembered Musashi's words, observe, but do not become the storm. And they stayed with me like a stone inside. Since then, I've learned to be silent not as a weakling, but as someone who has power over himself. The second discovery, people are predictable. I started observing people. At the market, in the subway, in the office. Do you know what I saw? We are all walking algorithms. An irritated person almost always repeats the same words, like a broken record. A frightened one starts joking nervously or covers their mouth with a hand. A proud woman smiles, but her fingers turn white from tension. I saw patterns, templates, and I realized, if I can see the pattern, I can predict the reaction. It's like chess. You know where he'll move next, and you suddenly have time. The first time I tried this method in an argument with my boss, I saw it works. He began to boil. I watched, anticipated, and responded exactly where he least expected it. And suddenly his fire went out. The third discovery, breathing, is the key. It sounds banal, right? But one day I realized how breathing controls my state. I was sitting before an important meeting, heart pounding so hard I nearly fainted. Then I remembered one exercise. Inhale for 4 counts. Hold. Slow exhale for 6. I did it once, twice, 3 times, and suddenly realized. My whole body calmed, my mind cleared, as if I had surfaced from muddy waters. Since then, it has become my weapon. I can walk into any argument, any conflict, and the first thing I do is breathe. 3 cycles, and I am already a different person. And you know what's amazing? It works not only for me. I taught it to several people, and each of them later said, "You changed my life." The fourth discovery, purpose. You can't imagine how many people lose in conflict simply because they don't know why they entered it in the first place. I used to be like that. I wanted to prove I was right. I wanted to humiliate. I wanted to win. And then I would sit in emptiness asking myself, what was it all for? Purpose is the compass. Without it, you become a toy of emotions. Once I understood this, my life changed. Now, before any quarrel, I ask myself one question: what do I really want? And the answer is not always noble. Sometimes it's not about proving the truth, but about saving the relationship. Sometimes not about winning, but simply walking away alive. Sometimes staying silent and leaving. And that's not weakness. That's strategy. The fifth discovery, death as a teacher. The hardest truth to admit, but I will say it. My greatest teacher is death. As a child, I feared it so much that I couldn't sleep at night. I would approach my grandfather's bed and listen. Is he breathing? It seemed to me, if he died, I would die too. And one day he said, "Yes, I will die. But your life will not end because of it. You are not my shadow." Those words changed me. I realized our fear of death is really fear of losing what is familiar, fear of losing our anchor. We call it love, but in truth it is egoism. Buddhists say, meditate on death, and you will begin to live. And it's true. When I stopped running from the thought of death, I for the first time began to truly value each day. Stoics, monks, and warriors. I searched for confirmation of these thoughts in different cultures. From the Stoics, I found the saying, remember that you will die, and then your worries will shrink to nothing. From Tibetan monks I heard, Begin each morning with the awareness that the day may be your last. And from warriors, Spartans, or samurai, I saw the same. They knew death was always near. And precisely because of that, they lived more fully than anyone else. True calmness. And here is what I finally understood. True calmness is not indifference, not pretending to be an iceberg. It is the ability to look your emotions in the face and say, yes, I am angry. Yes, I am afraid. But they don't rule me. I respect my emotions. I keep them close, like a dog on a leash. But I don't let them lead me. That is strength. That is true calmness. Love without chains. And the last thing I learned, love without attachment. We call love our clinging. We fear losing someone because without them we are scared. But true love is the choice to be with someone today, without guarantees. It is not a foundation you stand on, but the meeting of two whole people. And if life separates you, yes, you cry, but you do not collapse. Because you are whole. That is maturity. That is freedom. I have told you 5 discoveries that changed my life. And each one is a step toward that very state the ancients called Zen and modern psychologists call a mature self. I grow more and more convinced. The power of calmness is not a philosophy for bookshelves. It is a weapon. A weapon that works everywhere. On the battlefield, in the negotiation room, at the family kitchen table. Warriors who knew the value of silence. I spent a long time studying the histories of ancient armies. The Spartans, for example. From childhood, they were taught not to scream and not to show pain. Laconia, the land of Lacedaemon, gave the world the word laconic. Their soldiers died in silence. But before death, they would utter short phrases that later became legends. Why? Because silence and precision of words were proof of inner power. I think about how this works in the modern world. When everyone shouts and demands attention, when social media is nothing but a constant scream into the void, silence becomes the loudest cry. Tibetan monks and the art of death. In Tibet, there is a practice called maranasati, meditation on death. I once met a monk who every day imagined his own body rotting in the ground. It sounds horrifying, yet he smiled as he spoke about it. I don't run from fear. I befriend it, he said. And that's why it no longer rules me. That's when I thought, here it is, real freedom. In the West, we run from the thought of the end, while there, people sit face to face with it and grow stronger. Stoics and gladiators. The Roman Stoics taught the same. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could die today. Act as if it has already happened." And the gladiators? Many of them stepped into the arena not as beasts, but as philosophers of death. They knew today could be their last fight, and precisely because of that, they entered calmly, accepting the game of fate. I read these stories and realized they all spoke of the same thing. Once you have accepted death, you become invincible, because there is nothing left to lose. Modern survival practices. I spoke with soldiers who had gone through war zones. One of them told me, the most dangerous moment is when panic begins. Panic kills faster than a bullet. He described being under fire, his breathing shallow, his hands trembling, almost ready to run. But then he remembered a simple exercise. Inhale, hold, exhale. Within a minute, he could think again. He said, if it weren't for breathing, I wouldn't be here. And now look at how similar this is to what Musashi did hundreds of years ago. Inhale, exhale, calmness, and you live. Psychology and science. Modern psychology confirms what the ancients knew. There is a term, cognitive reappraisal. When you name an emotion in words, I feel anger, I am afraid. The rational part of the brain activates. Neuroscientists ran experiments. People were placed in stressful situations. Some reacted impulsively. Others were instructed to describe what they felt. Those who named the emotion kept control. And I think the Stoics knew this, the samurai knew this, the monks knew this. They simply called it by different names. Conflicts in real life. I remember one story from my own life. A conversation with a close person that turned into a fight. She was shouting, throwing words that cut painfully. In the past, I would have shouted back. But that day I paused. I noticed, yes, I was angry. Yes, I was hurt. But my goal was not to prove myself right. It was to preserve the relationship. And I simply said, I hear you. Let's talk when we've cooled down. That pause saved us both. Because I didn't let emotions grab the wheel. Purpose as an anchor. In every storm of emotions, I now hold on to purpose. I ask myself, why am I here? What do I want in the end? And you know what I realized? Most quarrels in our lives aren't needed at all. They're empty. Storms in a glass of water. Musashi fought only for victory and survival. But we often fight for ego, for emptiness. When I realized that, my life became calmer. A life lived to the fullest. But the greatest lesson I learned, death as a compass. I remember that childhood fear, checking if my grandfather was still breathing. Back then I lived in constant expectation of the end. But now I have learned to look that fear in the face. And you know what happened? Awareness of death became my fuel. If I die tomorrow, why postpone the words, I love you? Why hold on to grudges? Why waste life playing someone else's games? Death is near, and precisely because of that, I live stronger. True love. I also understood love. Before, I clung to people. I was afraid to lose them. But once I heard a Tibetan teacher say, love is not holding, it is allowing to be. And I realized, true love is not about fear, it is about joy. The joy of being together while you can. Without guarantees, without chains. Since then, I've felt freer and lighter. The conclusion. I share all this not for pretty words. This is my path. I learned from warriors, from monks, from psychology, and from fear itself. I lost. I fell. But each time I rose and found a new piece of truth. And now I know for sure, calmness is not indifference. It is mastery of oneself. It is the ability to see emotions, respect them, but keep them on a leash. It is the ability to stay silent when everyone screams, to foresee when everyone else is lost, to breathe when others suffocate, and above all, to remember death in order to truly live. Do you know what I finally came to realize? That our entire life is an endless conflict. Not always with people, sometimes with ourselves, sometimes with circumstances, sometimes with an invisible enemy within. And it is in these conflicts that we are truly tested for who we are. I understood. The most dangerous one in a clash is not the one who strikes first. The most dangerous one is the one who remains human when others turn into beasts. Power over yourself is greater than power over others. We spend far too much energy trying to control others through shouting, threats, manipulation. But all of that is an illusion. True power is power over yourself. If you master yourself, if you can put your emotion on the shelf like a cup, you are already stronger than any scream. Musashi knew this. The monks knew it. The Stoics knew it. And now I know it too. Emotions are not enemies, but allies. I did not turn into stone. I did not cut anger, fear, or pain out of myself. I learned to look them in the face. I learned to respect them, but not obey them. And here is the surprising thing. Once you stop fearing your emotions, they stop tearing you apart. Anger becomes energy you can turn into strength. Fear becomes caution. Pain becomes experience. Love and death, the two greatest teachers. I realized we live as if we have eternity. We postpone words, postpone actions, postpone life. And then death comes and reminds us there is no time. It is death that teaches us how to love. Not to cling, not to demand, but to rejoice while you can be together. Love without chains, that is mature love. And here is the paradox. Once you accept death, you finally begin to live. A practice that changes everything. I reduced it all to 4 simple steps that always work. Notice the emotion. Say to yourself, I am angry, I am afraid. And you are no longer the emotion. You are the one who sees it. Pause. Stay silent. Let the other shout, while you remain a tree in the storm. Breathe. Inhale for 4. Hold. Exhale for 6. Return your body and mind to yourself. Name the goal. Ask, what do I really want? And hold on to that. These steps are simple, but within them lies the strength of generations, from samurai to special agents. My conclusion. Now I know, the true winner is not the one left standing at the end of the fight. The true winner is the one who kept clarity when others drowned in chaos. Calmness is not weakness. It is the summit of strength. So when people ask me, what do you fear most? I answer, not death. I fear living a life without ever knowing who I am. And if I can live each day with clarity, with respect for myself and others, with love without chains, and with calmness in the storm, then I am on the right path. Final words. Remember this. He who is calm controls the conflict. He who foresees survives. He who breathes lives. And he who accepts death finally begins to live.